light of infinite.
All of life is about the beautiful balance of releasing control and connecting. Because we are tasked to toil for our bread, we find ourselves stuck in a mindset of thinking that we are in control of our lives, that the more we dominate our circumstances, the more we are in control. What we find in the lesson of Shemitah, the year of release, is that the rewards come from the release. Yes, we have to work the field, so to speak, but without pause, there's no ultimate pleasure. To demonstrate faith to ourselves and our Creator, we have to pause our compulsion to constantly control. What we see most immediately with Shabbat, especially in the era of these mini computers in our hands at most moments, is that while we seem to be steering the ship often is steering us. When we shift the dynamics and put away our machines, we can reconnect to our purpose, our Creator, and faith itself. It's like a hard reset to wash away the layers of disconnect so that we can once again feel unified with our Source. Just last week, we spoke about Shabbat as a day of rest for Hashem and for us, and covered the Shalosh Regalim, the high holidays, which the Torah also calls Shabbat, days of rest. In this Parashah, Behar, in this Torah portion, we are taught about Shabbat for the land of Israel. For 6 years, we may sow the field, prune the vineyards, and gather crops, but in the 7th year, the land shall have a Sabbath of complete rest, a Sabbath for Hashem. You shall not sow your field or prune your vineyard, a complete rest for the land. This 7th year is called the Shemitah year, the year when the land is released. We also learn in this Parashah that the Jewish people are commanded when they go into the land of Israel to count 7 Sabbaths of years, 7 years, 7 times, and the days of 7 Sabbaths of years shall be for you 49 years. The Torah goes further, instructing us to sanctify the 50th year and proclaim freedom throughout the land of all its inhabitants. This sounds pretty similar to the Sfirat HaOmer, where it's 7 days, 7 weeks, 49 days in nature, and then, instead of the 50th year, in the Sfirat HaOmer, the 50th day, where we receive the Torah anew, the redemption. Rav Natan of Breslov reminds us that after Adam ate from the tree, the curse of toiling the land came into play. The mitzvah, commandment of Shemitah, the year of release, the sabbatical year, rectifies Adam's sin by ceasing to toil the land. The most beautiful part of Shemitah is that every 7 years, we are commanded to forgive all debts, to not work the land of Israel by planting or harvesting, and to let all the produce that grows become hefker, which means ownerless, so that anyone can take and eat from it. This rectifies the sin of Adam, who separated from Hashem by defying his word. By observing Shemitah, we show our connection to Hashem and the mitzvot, the commandments, which act as a tikkun, as a rectification. Beyond the unification with our Creator is the unification with each other. The notion of all that we have worked for in the land becoming ownerless shows that we are all sharing equally in its benefits, demonstrating that separations are man-made and, in fact, we are all truly united. It's a time when we transcend all economic and social differences. As we read in this Parashah, in this Torah portion, the Sabbath produce of your land shall be yours to eat, for you, for your slave, and for your maidservant, and for your laborer, and for the residents who dwell with you, and for your animal, and for the beast that is in your land. Just as the Shabbat is 1/60th of the next world, so too the year of Shemitah, when we stop working the field, gives us a taste of the world beyond our finite one, where all beings, including animals and rich and poor alike, have access to the complete harvest. It's a time when the figment of our fractured perceptions and differences between each other fall by the wayside, and when we share status, all being infused with godliness and equal standing. Taking this a step further with Yovel, the Jubilee year, in the 50th year, the land of Israel must again lie fallow. It may not be worked. And all land in Israel that was purchased in those 50 years is returned to its original owners, in addition to the cancellation of all debts and freeing of all slaves. These laws pertain to the land of Israel, as it says, "Take off your shoes from your feet, for the place upon which you are standing is holy ground." It's no coincidence that we read this parashah at the same time that we are counting the Sfirat HaOmer. 49 days, 7 days for 7 weeks, from Pesach leading to Shavuot. The 50th day, which Kabbalistically represents the 50th gate of understanding, of Binah. The cycle of 7 is seen throughout our lives. The 2 7-day festivals, Pesach and Shavuot, marriage is celebrated and sanctified via the Sheva Brachot, the 7 blessings. Shiva, the mourning period of the loved one, is 7 days. 7 days is the count of clean days around Nidah, women's menstruation, and of course the sanctification and inauguration of the sanctuary, Shivat Yimei Miluim, and the period of purification we undergo in the times of the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, when we can count from Tum'ah to Tahor, purity, And related to the time of Sfirat HaOmer, the splitting of the sea took place 7 days after the Exodus. And the giving of the Torah happened 7 weeks after Exodus. 7 is a cycle and a space where we could rectify the natural. And in that rectification, we are answered with revelations of divinity. As we covered last week, Sfirat HaOmer is a journey in refining the 7 emotional attributes outlined in the 10 Sfirot. Keter, crown, Chokhmah, wisdom, Bina, understanding, Da'at, knowledge, Chesed, loving kindness, Gevura, restraint, justice, strength, Tiferet, harmony, beauty, compassion, Netzach, dominance, endurance, victory, Hod, empathy, humility, splendor, Yesod, foundation, and finally Malchut, kingship. And the 7 Sfirot permeate the 7 days of creation and are the ways in which Hashem orchestrates existence. We see this in ourselves created in Hashem's image, as we are composed of the 7 attributes that we rectified during the Omer: love, restraint, harmony, ambition, devotion, connection, and receptiveness. The Arizal explains that true freedom is the release of consciousness from its constricted state, the ability to approach divine understanding of the world. Both Shemitah and Sfirah are opportunities for us to rectify our base nature towards divine understanding. Rashi asks why the connection between Shemitah and Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, and as a response, the Khatam Sofer draws a parallel between the year of Shemitah and every day of the annual Sfirat HaOmer period. Each Shemitah consists of 7 years and is followed by the 50th year, Yovel. The 7 weeks of 7 days of Sfirat HaOmer prepare us for receiving the Torah when the shofar blasts, just as it does on Yom Kippur of Yovel. And as we read in Sefer Shmot in the Exodus, upon an extended blast of the shofar, they may ascend the mountain. We see the connection between Yovel and Har Sinai, as the shofar blasts at Har Sinai were described as Yovel. In this Parashah, in this Torah portion, we read that every 7th year was called Shabbat Haaretz, the Sabbath of the land. This parallels every 7 days of Sfirat HaOmer, which contains a Shabbat. So the ultimate redemption comes by way of both the 50th gate of understanding, through Sfirat HaOmer, the 7 Shabbatot, of our inner selves leading to Shavuot, and the 7 cycles of Shemitah, of that which surround us, how we elevate nature, leading to the ultimate redemption, Yovel at Har Sinai. Chazal, the sages, say, whoever sanctifies himself from below is sanctified from above. And this recurring pattern in the Torah of just that, 6 days and years of working in nature, a 7th day and year of rest in holiness, and then the multiplication of those 7 days or years by another 7, all leading up to the 8th day, or the 50th day, and the 50th year. Numbers that represent time beyond nature, the time that Hashem intervenes on another level, connection beyond our limitations in this world. We have a Shabbat in time, the 7th day, in space, the high holidays, and in both space and time, the Shemitah and Yovel, all intended to take all that we put into creation, all the work we do from below, and return it to us in a time of rest and unification with the divine. The 8th day and the 50th day and year go beyond even that and hint towards a time when we won't be constricted or held down by the world and its toil. Instead, we'll be completely unified to purpose, oneness, and spirituality. This is referred to as the days of Kulo Shabbat, entirely Shabbat. Our sages refer to it as the Messianic era, when darkness will be fully transformed into light. We won't have to toil for our food, and as King David sings, let there be an abundance of grain on earth. The Akedat Yitzchak says that Shemitah and Yovel are windows to open blind eyes, which are immersed in the sights of the immediate time. All land becomes ownerless, so a person doesn't become enslaved by his own labor and puts his faith back into Hashem as the ultimate provider. He is reminded in this dramatic way to be content with keeping enough of his produce to sustain himself and not to allow himself to be overcome by the desires to accumulate wealth. Ta'avat Mammon. It's an incredible way to be mindful of human nature and the cycles that surround it, and to meditate on the part of us, our neshama, our soul, that surpasses nature. I love what Judith Shulowitz shared in this topic in New York Times Magazine. I often think of something two rabbis said. Rabbi Judah Lau of Prague, best known for his tales of the Golem, pointed out that the story of creation was written in such a way that each day, each new creation is seen as a step towards a completion that occurred on the Shabbat. What was creation's climactic culmination? The act of stopping. Why should God have considered it so important to stop? Rabbi Elijah of Vilna put it in this way: God stopped to show us that what we create becomes meaningful to us only once we stop creating it and to start thinking about why we did so. The implication is clear. We could let the world wind us up and set us to marching like a mechanical doll that goes on and on until they fall over because they don't have a mechanism that allows them to pause. But that would make us less than human. We have to remember to stop because we have to stop to remember. The land can keep giving and we can keep taking, just as we can keep lending and allowing other people to take on debts, even if we see that a person might not be able to pay us back. When that is the case, debts build up across a whole community, the land becomes burdened without any way to release the tension, fear, and greed. Nina Beth Cardin says that Shemitah is a rehearsal of a new way, a time to practice living in a world of enoughness, where each of us is filled and flourished with enough, where disproportionate iniquities would not and could not exist. And when Shemitah is over and we re-enter the other 6 years, we take a bit of what we learn with us and put it into practice in our everyday lives. Shemitah is a divine imperative, a concept introduced with the words behar Sinai on Mount Sinai, so we are meant to rest assured that even though we are pausing from sowing the field, Hashem will provide, as we read, "My blessings for you in the 6th year, and it will yield a crop sufficient for the 3-year period." In this pasuk, in this verse, Hashem addresses the worry that we might have that we won't have sufficient provisions for the year of Shemitah and the 3 years after it. Hashem says that He will bless the land and that miraculously there will be 3 years worth of provisions to reap in the 6th year, just before the Shemitah year. Just as there was a double portion of manna on Erev Shabbat when the Jews were in the desert, so too there will be extra produce before the Shemitah in the Promised Land, so the people can fully celebrate this moment of holy rest. We need to realize that Hashem's blessing us. It's not a product of nature, but produced by divine blessings. It's similar to the blessings of parnasah, of livelihood. We can do our part, the hishtadlut, but for the blessings to be received, it's ultimately in the hands of Hashem. Historically, the first Shemitah took place after the destruction of the second Beit HaMikdash, the second Holy Temple. To this day, farmers in Israel are required to keep Shemitah. The last one was September 7th, 2021, and ended September 25th, 2022. Yovel, on the other hand, is not currently observed because the entire Jewish nation needs to be living in Israel for it to be in effect. Once the tribes of Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh were exiled 130 years before the destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash, the Yovel could no longer be observed. Nevertheless, the lessons of Shemitah and Yovel are timeless. Chinuch teaches that Shemitah is meant to commemorate the renewal of the world by Hashem alone, to teach us that having emunah, faith, and bitachon, trust, in Hashem, in our God, on the one hand, and generosity on the other. We fulfill these mitzvot, these commandments, by releasing our impulse to work the land excessively and control creation. We release ownership and debts to ones in need, shifting our focus and trust in our own work and control and putting faith in divine will. It's a profound illustration of our faith that, after all, everything belongs to the master of it all, Hashem. Release, control, and connect.